Okay. Again, my name is Tom Hawkins. I am a University of California Master Gardener in Sacramento County. Master Gardeners are UC trained volunteers that help homeowners with plant, pest control, and other gardening questions that they might have. We posted on our Natomas Garden Arts Club web pages links to the Sacramento County Master Gardener page for information, more information on worm composting. One of them is this gardening notes, which is a great piece of information, much of which I'm going to be talking about tonight. Also a couple of videos on worm composting and some more information. So I encourage you to see that to get more information on it. Coming up this Saturday is our annual Harvest Day, which this year is going to be virtual because of COVID. Normally we're at the Fair Oaks Horticultural Center, and there we get 2,000 to 2,500 people. Well, that's not going to happen this year. It's all going to be virtual, but all the information is on our Sacramento County Master Gardener website. Okay, hopefully you guys can all see me still, if I can. Okay.
Good. Keep going. You're good.
Okay. Anyway, that's all posted on there, and hopefully you will be able to glean some information from there. Okay. Now, in my presentation, like we just said, if you got questions, put them in the chat. We will answer them at the end of the presentation. Okay. So, first of all, yeah, I'm a Master Gardener, and I'm on the compost team, as you can see by this and by that. So, vermiculture. Number one, I put in the wrong word, really. Vermiculture is the culturing or raising of worms for worms. In other words, the product is worms. What we're doing is vermicomposting or worm composting. We're using the worms to create compost. And this compost or worm castings are great for your garden. It's a wonderful soil amendment, very high in nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and other micronutrients. And it will not burn your plants. So I'm going to be going over 5 things in this whole process of worm composting. You got to have a worm bin. You got to have bedding for the worms. You got to have food for the worms. And you've got to have a method of harvesting the compost without hurting the worms, because you want to reuse those worms in a new bin, creating more compost. So the worm bin, or the worm box, you can purchase one online, be relatively expensive, or you can build your own, which I think most people do. You can build it out of wood, untreated wood, much like this picture shows, or it can be made out of plastic like this. But in either case, it has to have a tight fitting lid, so vermin and other creatures don't get in there to get to your worms or the food that's going to be in there. The bin itself should be less than 12 inches tall. In this case, like my bin here is 8 inches. It's very important to have aeration. You can see here in this drawing of the wooden one, it's got all sorts of holes drilled in it. The same thing I've done here. What you do, if this was an empty bin, you'd use your drill with a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch bit, and I put in like 12 holes on each of the long sides, about 8 on the other sides, and 15 or 18 on the bottom for drainage. The easiest and cheapest way, of course, is to go the plastic route. Buy a storage bin at any big box store. Important thing is it's got to be solid color. It can't be transparent. Worms hate light. It also needs to set on, a couple bricks, a couple 2x4s to allow for the drainage, and depending on where you are or where you're going to put your bin, you may want to put down, metal or plastic tray to catch anything that that drains out of the bin. So that's the bin. Okay, in the bin, we got to put the bedding. This is the organic material that worms live in, and they also eat. And as you can see here, you can use pine shavings. These are, they come in a big bundle. You get them at a pet supply place. It's for hamsters, guinea pigs, rabbits. You can use corrugated cardboard. That's got to be shredded, into smaller pieces. You can use coir, which is shredded coconut husks. You can buy that from Amazon or other stores in a compressed cube for about $20. Or my preferred method is using shredded paper, newspaper. Here is, all this I shredded from newspaper in the regular paper shredder. And so what you do is, assuming this bin here was an empty bin, you'd first, in the bottom of that empty bin, you would get some newspaper, about 3 or 4 or 5 thicknesses of newspaper, and put it in the bottom of the bin. Then you need to add the bedding. And whatever bedding you use, it's got to be moist. No matter what bedding, it's got to be about the same moistness as you would have in a damp sponge. In other words, you got a sponge wet, you squeeze out all the water, and you let go. It's still got water in there. You can squeeze it, and maybe a drop or two will come out. That's the kind of moisture content we're looking for. So what I do is when I'm filling up my bin, I take out a handful of the paper, and I use a spray bottle like this, spray it, and put it in the bin, and keep doing that. I feel I got more control over how much moisture is going into that bedding. I'm looking at my teleprompter behind here. Oh yes. Okay. Now the bin itself needs to go in the shade. I've got 2 bins, and I've got them on the north side of my house. They never get any sun, and it's get to be 100 degrees, but in reality, it's probably only about 80 or so, maybe a little bit more in here. And these worms, they really thrive between 55 degrees and 80 degrees. They'll go to town eating this food and the paper and creating compost. So we got a bin, we got bedding, and then we need worms. So let's go on. Next poster here. Red wigglers. That's what you're looking for. In the natural world, this is where they live. This is the soil, and this is leaf litter, dead leaves, other organic matter, pine needles, moisture. This is where the red wigglers live. They thrive because they're eating this stuff. You can see down here, earthworm, they don't live up here or eat up here. They burrow down and they eat detritus or organic material that's in the soil. Same thing with, night crawlers and mini crawlers. Those are the worms you do not want. They will not work well in this bin situation. So where do you get these worms? Well, you can go to any bait store, tackle store, fishing, and buy the same red worms, but just ask for red wigglers. I'm going to open them up and show them to you. This is like the 5th time I've done this today. Yep. But there you go. You can see, look at that group of worms. There's like 50 worms in here. And that is enough, because you only need about 24 worms to start off. That would do 2 bins. Of course, you could put them all into 1 bin. what else? Oh, that's it on the worms, I think. So next is worm food. And, you know, obviously you don't feed them carrots, full carrots. You feed them peelings, scraps from your kitchen, fruits, vegetables, you know, tea bags, coffee and coffee filters, eggshells, you know, apple cores, lettuce. What you don't want to put in there, though, you know, is clean stuff, stuff without oil or dressing. What you don't want to feed them is, and hold on just a second while I change my teleprompter. Yeah, no animal products, no meat, no fish, no oil, no fat, no plant or animal oil, and no dairy products. No onions and garlic. They don't like that. Citrus peel you can do, but it's got to be in not a big amount of the total food you're feeding them. But definitely no pet litter, no animal feces, and no processed food. So I think most people do, and what we do is we have a pail, stainless steel pail underneath the sink. It's cool. It's got a little filter in there, organic or carbon filter for the smell. And we just put all our stuff in there, as you can see. And then when it's time to feed the worms, what you do is you go into your worm bin, you dig out, you know, a hole and go down about that deep and put in the food, covered up with at least 2 inches or so of the bedding, cover it back up and put it out, and they're fed for a week. I actually sometimes I feed them more than that. Actually, they will really eat a lot sometimes. Okay, and then the other thing they need is either a little bit of soil, a little bit of really fine granulated or fine sand, or crushed up eggshells. And you can see these eggshells here crushed up like this in little tiny pieces. They use this, they eat this too, and that helps them, as grit to help them digest food. Okay, I'm trying to find out where I am here. Okay, once you've put the food and grit and everything in there, then what you need to do is over the top of your bedding is put plastic, black plastic. I've got clear plastic in my other room. Put a towel on top of that, which will keep them a little warmer in the winter and a little cooler in the summer. And then put the tight fitting lid back on here and put it in the shaded area, wherever it's going to be, either outside or inside your garden. So, and then about every week, you add more food. And when you do that, you add it to a different section or place within the bin. Don't keep putting it in the same place every week. In about 6-8 months or shorter, you're going to have compost. And you're going to need to harvest it. And again, the whole point is to harvest your compost without hurting the worms, because you want to use those worms again. So there's 2 methods of harvesting compost. But first of all, how do you know when it's ready to harvest? Well, it's going to be dark, and it's going to look like coffee grounds. I don't know how well you can see that, but I will pull out a little bit here so you can see it. I froze here, or did I? Anyway, it looks very much like coffee grounds. Amazing. So this stuff is almost ready to go. This is actually only about 4 months old. They've been really going fast on this. So anyway, when you want to harvest it, in the bin, you move all this material, this compost, over to one side, and then in that empty side, you put in new moist bedding, and food. And then you put your plastic towel and lid back on it and let it go for a week. Open it up, put more food in there, and do that for about a month. And these worms that were over here, there's hardly any food over here anymore. It's all over here. So they're going to migrate over here. So after a month, you're going to open it up and scoop out all of that compost. You might get a few worms with it, and you can pick them out and throw them over there. When you get all the compost out, then again on this side, you got to refill that with moist bedding and more food, cover it up, put the lid on, and again, you're off and running, you know, feeding them every week to create new compost. The other one way of doing it is the dump method. That's where you put like a blue tarp, you know, a tarp down on the ground. You take this whole thing, I'm sorry. You take this whole thing, dump it on the tarp, and create a whole bunch of little piles like this, you know, about 6 inches, 8 inches tall, like a little pyramid. You're doing this outside where there's sunlight, and all those worms who hate sunlight are going to go in to burrow more into these mounds, go down toward the bottom, and after about 10 minutes, then you can scrape off an inch or two of that pile, put it in a container for your compost, wait a little longer for those, again, for those worms to move further in, again, harvest, go back. You'll eventually end up with, you know, a big pile of worms and some compost, and there will be piles of worms. And hopefully you have already prepared another bin, you know, with paper, moist bedding, food. Take those worms and throw them in there, cover them up, and you're off and running that way. One thing you can do, what I do, is with this compost, is that, you know, you build a quick little frame like this with a wire mesh in here, 1/4 inch or smaller, and put that compost in here over a bucket or something under a container underneath here and shake it and sift this stuff to get out the big pieces. There will be big pieces, and those big pieces, you know, you can either put back in the bin, your new bin you're creating, or just toss it if it hasn't been eaten by then. This here is compost that I harvested about 4 months ago. Yeah, about that. And I'll quickly get some out on a plate here so you can see it a little better. That it's you know, it's beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. So you've harvested. So now you got compost. Now what are you going to do with it? Well, you know, it's to be used in your garden on top of the soil, or you can put it on the soil and incorporate it into the soil. When you're planting a new plant or seeds, you can dig a hole, put compost in there, kind of mix it up with the native soil in there and plant. The plant will go great, no burning at all. So it's a great soil amendment, and it's great for container plants, both inside and outside. So a few things, facts about worms. In a bin like this, worms can live up to 10 years. I could hardly believe that. In the wild, they only live for about 1 to 2 years in nature. They are hermaphrodites, meaning they got male and female, but they reproduce like mad in the bins. They don't have eyes. They sense light from sensors on their skin or the outside covering. The big thing is, you know, you take a worm. People often say, if you take a worm and cut it in half, you're going to end up with 2 worms. Well, no, you're going to end up with 1 dead worm, not 2 live worms. The other thing, when you pick out something like an eggshell or an avocado peel, with, you know, they'll be full of compost in there and full of worms. They love to get in these things. And the most important thing is the worms can eat their weight or more per day. So they're voracious and they can create a lot of compost. So recapping real quick, you got a bin, an empty bin. You put newspaper in the bottom. You put moist bedding in there. You put the worms in there. You dig down and put your food in there. You cover it with plastic, a towel, a tight fitting lid. Have it on a couple of 2x4s of bricks and put it wherever you're going to put it. Feed it every week and you're going to end up with compost. So, are there any questions?
And Nancy, were there questions that were posed in the chat box? Are you guys muted?
That you have to unmute them?
Yeah. Chris, can you unmute yourself? There you go. Where's Nancy at? Oops. Here you go, Nancy. Are you there? Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm there. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's some questions. I have one, but I'll do the ones in order. There was a question about how much does a cup of worms cost, and that was answered by Chris at about $5 at a bait shop. Is that what you think, Tom?
Yep,
Okay.
That's correct.
Another question from Janine. Are coffee grounds okay? I worry about them getting too acidic.
No, they love it. I put in coffee grounds every time I feed them. They get a lot of coffee grounds and the filter paper. No, that's fine with coffee grounds.
Okay. Hold on just a second. Another question was, how many worms if we have a large compost bin, 3 foot by 5 foot? That's big.
That's a monster. I mean, and this is for worm composting.
Yeah, you need a small container like what you have there, right?
Well, you could we've got one, a wooden one that's, I think it's 4 foot by 2.5 foot in that deep. How many worms? Well, I mean, you could start out probably with, a couple of containers of worms. They're going to reproduce. As long as they got good bedding, moisture, air, and food, they're going to go to town and they're going to reproduce and they're going to be creating more and more worms, more than you can imagine.
Okay, next question was from Amy. What are the holes in the bin for?
Aeration. The ones on the side are for air to come in. Worms, they don't have lungs, but they take in oxygen through their skin, so they got to have air. So you got to have air coming in. The holes in the bottom are really for drainage. As they're eating, they're respiring too, creating CO2 and water, so it may get more moist, and you're going to get liquid that may, penetrate down and leak out of those bottom holes. That's what you want. You don't want a whole bunch of liquid built up at the bottom of your bin.
Okie dokie. A question from DJ. Will they eat my dahlias?
Well, they will eat anything organic. They eat anything that actually decomposes. So I wish Patty Peterson was here to answer that.
You can get back to her.
Yeah, we can get back to you on that. I'm sure you could, because dahlias would be the same thing, as a litter pile, on the soil surface. Anything that decomposes, because that's really what they're really eating, is the part of the organic matter that's decomposing. There's bacteria in there that's decomposing that food, and that's what the worms are really getting into, is the stuff that's already decomposing. The more decomposed and smelly, the more they love it.
Okay, so another question is, how deep is the bedding at the beginning?
Well, they say we say, master gardeners say, about 3/4 full, which would be, about up to here, or in an 8-inch deep thing, it would be about 6 inches. And that's about what I had it at. I might have been a little bit more than that, but you don't want to fill it to the top. You want to leave a little bit of space.
Okay, Patty says, try it. I think they will like it. Patty Peterson. So she answered I guess
Okay, the dahlia.
yeah. Okay, I wanted to throw in a quick question, and then I think that's it so far. There was a private one. Anyway, I have a question about the soldier fly larvae that's on your poster.
Yes.
You're saying, we have a compost. We have tons of those. So what happens if you start getting things like that?
Patty's there too, but soldier flies are okay. But yeah, they're not going to hurt anything, but you can get ants, and that's particularly if it's too dry in the bin. That's when you want to add some more moisture. And flies, you can get those, and you want to make sure that you're burying your food. And of course, your mouse, that's why you have a tight lid. I don't know what the smell means there. It's not going to smell. Ooh, it smells great. And, you can go, this is the important thing here, on vacation. You feed them, put in some food. I mean, you can go 3-4 weeks. They're going to eat all this bedding that you put in there. They're going to eat that. They're going to eat that, and it's going to become compost. So, as a matter of fact, that's what I know Sue does that, her master gardeners. When she is getting done, she just doesn't feed them anymore and just makes those worms eat the rest of the bedding.
Okay. Let's see.
All of the questions. Is that all the questions there, Nancy?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just a thank you. Okay, thank you. Somebody says
All right.
thank you.
Right. Well, I'm gonna go ahead, Nancy. Go ahead.
I don't see any more. Chris, what do you think?
Is Chris?
She's supposed to be upstairs listening.
She's trying to talk, but I think she's still muted.
Well, you saw the same chat, right? So.
Okay, somebody said no question, but I sure enjoyed the presentation.
Oh.
Not be muted. Yes, yes, it was good. I'm gonna
Excellent.
if Tom blow a kiss and wave, because I'm gonna share the screen and put back up those informational.